Hello folks, and welcome to the Red Bull Ring at the end of the Austrian Grand Prix 2021 for your F1 Live post-race show. I am Will Buxton, and he is Callum Milot.
Thank you for having me back.
It's wonderful to have you back, my man. A great race out there today, if your name is Max Verstappen, but we had a race filled with controversy, with race moments that actually, all the way to that final lap between your teammate Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, we weren't short on action out there today.
Definitely not, definitely not. Obviously there were stages in the race where, there was a lot of competition in the midfield, especially towards the end with Alonso and Russell, but yeah, what an action-packed race.
Absolutely. It was Max Verstappen, your race winner, has led every single lap here in Austria over the last 2 weekends. Let's go through who finished where at the end of the Austrian Grand Prix, because it is Max Verstappen with another win for 2021, this time finishing ahead of Valtteri Bottas. Behind Bottas was Lando Norris in P3, then Lewis Hamilton P4. We will talk about that and the reasons why that came to pass as it did. Carlos Sainz with a wonderful strategy from Ferrari to put him up into 5th ahead of Sergio Perez, who with a couple of penalties landed up in 6th ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in 7th. A better race from him. Then Charles Leclerc, Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso breaking George Russell's heart a couple of laps from home. P11 was the aforementioned George Russell, then Yuki Tsunoda in 12th, who couldn't seem to get his pit entry right at all today. Lance Stroll 13th, then Giovinazzi 14th, Latifi in 15th, ahead of Räikkönen and Vettel, who collided on the final lap. Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, your final classified drivers. Esteban Ocon, the one and only DNF of the day. And Callum, where do we start? Perhaps with Max Verstappen, who has been imperious here in Austria, whichever one you want to call it. Both weekends led every lap, 2 victories, fastest lap of the race today, and just unbeatable.
I mean, it was clear last weekend he was the man to beat, and he followed it up this weekend with an amazing performance. I mean, quali was really, really strong. Obviously, Lando was very, very close, but Max was able to just pip him. And then in the race, I mean, 20 seconds ahead of P2 is quite an impressive performance here.
It's not sort of verbose, or it's not over the top to say he's walked these 2 races. No one has been able to challenge him.
It's lights to flag victory. I mean, no mistakes, no moments. I mean, it's a perfect double weekend, really.
And this is a guy who has never led a World Championship before, has never led the Formula One World Championship before. He just seems, when you speak to him, so serene, so calm, taking it all in his stride.
I mean, everyone matures at different rates. Obviously, Max was thrown into F1 really early, but I think he's just reached another level this year. Clicked with the car, clicked with the team, and he's just settled into it and keeps going. And
when you do click with a car like Max has done with this, do you get into, or can you get into we talk of it as sort of a positive spiral, but you're a racing driver, you know whether that exists or not, or if it's just us in the media making things up, where that positivity leads to results and the results lead to positivity, and everything just seems to be stepping up and up and up.
For sure. I mean, these 2 weekends have been a point to that. I mean, it's good once you get the momentum. Obviously, some weekends, it can be tougher. Your car doesn't suit the track so well, but clearly, the past 3 weekends he's been on top form, and these last 2 it's been mega.
And we have to talk about Lando Norris, as you said, narrowly missed out on pole position. Was incredible all the way through this weekend. Arguably should have been second today, but for an in-race penalty, which we will come to later in the show. But for now, a podium, will he be happy with that, or will it be a case of what could have been?
I think, to be honest, he'll be happy with that. Obviously, P2 was achievable. P1 was a bit out of reach. To be honest, Max was a bit too quick. But, it was looking likely for P4 for a while after the penalty. But, I mean, this weekend he's been on top form as well. You can't say that he's not overachieved, in my opinion. No,
and he remains the only driver this year to have scored in every single race. That consistency is paying dividends.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's good for them in the championship, and, it's good for him as well to show what he can do.
Valtteri Bottas needed a good race today. He's under the microscope as Lewis Hamilton has re-signed until the end of 2023. That fight for the second Mercedes seat between George Russell, who has had a great weekend, and Valtteri. Valtteri getting a podium, will that be enough for him, do we think, to just lighten the mood?
I mean, again, like we said, this positive steps, for sure it helps and puts him in a better position for the future, but, it's not easy.
Now, one guy who has had 2 great weekends. Unfortunately, it was all over before it began this time last week. Not so today. Pierre Gasly, a wonderful race for you today, my man. I know you were worried before going into today's race about the graining, about the tyres, whether you could hold on. It looked like you had a great race out there.
Yeah, it was good. It was hard, especially the first stint on these soft tires was probably a bit more difficult than we expected, and we didn't benefit as much as we would have liked. But at the end of the race, we came really close to Charles, to Daniel. I would have liked. I got a bit frustrated at the end of the race. I would have liked to fight or at least try something on Charles, but yeah, we came 1 lap short, and in the end, we still managed to score 2 points. It's not much. Would have liked more, but I still think it was a good day.
It's always the way, isn't it? It's just need one lap more. Why is that? Why does that always happen in Formula One, that it comes down to the final lap?
You can always find, time like there and there during the race, and a couple laps to the end, I got a blue flag with Mick, and I lost a bit more time than I would have liked. And this braking could have been better, so you always find a bit time there and there, but I could see Charles was struggling. He was looking the wheels everywhere, and I knew that if I can just get slightly closer, I could have tried something on the braking, but yeah, not this time. We'll try better next time. I think our quality is good. Our race today on the two-stop strategy wasn't as good as we would have liked, but still think it was good. Yeah.
But here's the thing, you made the 2-stop work against a number of teams that were running 1-stop teams, which we assume would be faster. The McLarens, the Ferraris, you guys are in the mix, no?
Yeah, we're in the mix, and especially looking at the Aston Martin, which we are fighting in the championship. Seb and Lance didn't make it work, so it was slightly harder than we expected on these soft tires, but we still managed to make it work in a decent way, and we're fighting with the Ferraris. We can't complain with that, so it's looking good for the next races. Yeah.
Wonderful job. Thanks for coming on the show, Pierre.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, man. We'll see you at Silverstone. And now we move to George Russell. Man, I don't know what to say. It was, 2-3 laps away from that point, but this weekend overall has got to be seen as a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these last 3 weekends, finished 12th in France, 11th here. Should have maybe scored points last weekend. Definitely positive, but so close yet so far.
But again, and I want to get it right ahead of who you finished ahead of, one of the Alpha Tauris, both of the Aston Martins, both of the, Alfa Romeos. You are putting this car in places which, until a couple of races ago, we thought it would never be. Is that the car? Is it you? Is it a combination?
It's, the team are doing a great job, to be fair, making really good progress. And I've got really great confidence in the car and in the team. So when you have that, that really helps to extract a bit more from it. So, yeah, combination, but like I said, so close yet so far. Another race where we've been so close and every single top car finishes. And obviously in that position for me, if you choose to have any driver behind you, you probably wouldn't choose Fernando, with his experience. So, and he was obviously unfortunate yesterday. He should have been in the top 5, so he was flying.
Listen, man, I'm used to watching you win races in, all of the junior categories that you've come through. I'm used to watching you fight for championships. It's not been that way for a few years. How does it feel? And I can kind of see the smile always on your face now, to be fighting, to be doing what you do best, not just pulling around at the back for 70 laps in 19th, 18th place, but actually fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it felt really, really great, to be honest. Obviously that's what I used to do week in, week out, fighting and battling with cars, and I haven't done any of it for the past 2.5 years. And to go up against Fernando, held my own, had some nice wheel-to-wheel battles. It's not easy in F1. It's a completely different ball game compared to junior formulas. The size of the cars, you can't really see much with all the aero bits around you. I think we gave each other just about enough room. I said to him afterwards, I was defending for my life really, because that P10 was massive for us, and he understood.
Well done. Again,
Cheers.
man. Great job. Level head on George, as you'd expect. The guy. Well, he's quality, isn't he, through and through?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell he's a little bit, not annoyed, but there was definitely, he gave everything. So I think from that point of view, he's a bit deflated on that side. But I mean, he's got to try, and like he said, he had Alonso behind him.
Yeah.
In a faster car. It's only a matter of time. I think normally they go well in Budapest. In my opinion, that's where we might see a proper competition again.
Hot. It's not windy. Could be their track, couldn't it?
Maybe.
I like that, Callum. Right, we promised that we would talk, of course, about one of the defining moments of this Grand Prix. It was Lando Norris versus Sergio Perez. And Sam Collins, you can take us through exactly what went down, exactly how this moment defined the result of this race.
Well, Will, I'm not particularly happy right now. Normally after a great race like that, I'm always buzzing and having a good time. But I'm actually not happy because I think the FIA have set a bit of an unpleasant precedent with some of these penalties that were handed out during the Grand Prix. And the first of these was with Lando Norris. He was battling with Sergio Perez, and Sergio Perez was trying to get around the outside, and it didn't work out, and he ran into the gravel. That's the risk of trying to overtake round the outside. We've seen it time and time again. Now, my background is in stock car racing and rallying. I like a bit more of a physical race, and just running around the outside, if you have to go into the gravel, it's not the worst thing in the world. I don't think that deserved a 5-second penalty. I was sitting with Jordan King during the commentary, and we both said, that looks a little bit harsh in terms of penalty. Well, Sergio Perez didn't pay attention to that, did he? Because later in the race, he decided to try and overtake round the outside of the same, well, another very similar corner, the same corner, and on Charles Leclerc. And he just got a bit physical with Charles Leclerc, moved the Ferrari wide, and the Ferrari had to run through the gravel. The Monegasque driver didn't particularly like that approach and got on the radio and made his thoughts very clearly felt. But I think being able to overtake round the outside, that's part of Formula One. It's part of the risk. And if you end up in the gravel trap, so be it. That's motor racing. It's got to be tough, it's got to be harsh, and it's got to be difficult to overtake. Because if it's too easy, everybody could do it, couldn't they? I mean, Callum, I'm sure he's going to agree with me.
Sam, listen, mate, I love you to bits, my man, and you know I love a good hard race as much as anybody. But in this instance, the rules are the rules. You have to leave space at the sides of the track. It's not, under braking, having to leave the car's width, as we would normally have. But, and I've gone to the correct regulation, Sporting Code, Appendix L, Chapter 4, Paragraph 2B, manoeuvres liable to hinder other drivers, such as deliberate crowding of a car beyond the edge of the track, are strictly prohibited. Both of those examples, and the one that followed, my friends, are exactly that. It's a driver letting their car drift out wide so that the driver that's alongside them cannot do anything but back. They've been crowded outside of the track. And that is, I'm afraid, clear-cut penalty. But I tell you, one person who may have a decent opinion on that is Christian Horner. Christian, before we talk about the amazing day for Max Verstappen, just your insight, your feelings on the moment between Sergio and Lando. Was it worthy of a penalty in your opinion?
Look, to me, that's hard racing, and I didn't expect. I think I mentioned in the commentary on Sky at the time that that was racing. I didn't expect to see a penalty, for Lando from that. And then I guess once they'd awarded that penalty, then for Sergio's move with Charles, there was no choice. They had to repeat the same.
I've just read out the regulation that says that the drivers aren't allowed to crowd each other off the track. Is that not an instance in which, had they cut a slightly tighter line around the corner to allow that two cars to run side by side, it would have avoided the incident?
It's tricky. I mean, if the driver around the outside is further ahead around the outside, then the conceding driver has to give more. But when they've both gone barreling into the corner, you're going to run out of road. These guys know that from every go-kart race they've done, since the age of 6 or 7. So, that's racing, but that's the way it goes.
I want to talk about Max Verstappen. 2 weekends, led every lap. I mean, he looks so serene right now, almost untouchable.
No, he was in a league of his own, this last 2 weekends. I think he's pretty much led every single lap, that we've done here. And we didn't need to do the 2-stop. We went for it because we saw a little cut in one of the tires, and just we didn't want a repeat of Azerbaijan, and also to make sure of the fastest lap. So a phenomenal performance by him and the team, and extending both leads in Drivers' and Constructors' Championships.
I know you won't be counting your chickens too early, particularly not going up against a team as successful as Mercedes, but you've won World Championships in this sport. You know what it takes. It's Max's first time running for a World Championship. What do you see in him that fills you with the confidence that this is your year?
Well, I think he's just taking things, session by session, race by race, and he's not letting his concentration drift. He's very much in the now and focusing on, what we have at this point in time and ticking off the races. So it's a long, long championship, this, and it will have, we're not even at the halfway stage. We've had a phenomenal start. We've built some great momentum, and we've got to carry that on. But there's some big races coming up.
Silverstone being the next one, of course. It's a home race for you guys, as this was for Red Bull. Confident of the win?
Look, I mean, Silverstone has been such a strong circuit for Mercedes over the years. It's Lewis's home race, so he's going to have phenomenal support there, maybe a little bit like Max had here, from the Dutch and the Austrians. But it's a tough track, and they've been so dominant there in recent years. It'll be a big test for us. And of course, the first race with a sprint race as well, so a different dynamic as well.
Thanks for coming on, Christian. Really, really appreciate it. Now, Christian made the point, Callum, which you and I had actually discussed before we came on air, that if a driver finds themselves ahead, either going into or through a corner around the outside, that the driver alongside them should give them space. And on all those replays, you said to me as we were watching them, what did you say?
Yeah, that's the case.
They were ahead.
It's a kind of an unwritten rule, which I discovered the hard way when I went into the stewards. Actually here, 2016 maybe, and I wasn't just in front. Yeah, here, I mean, it's side by side or in front. So in that instance, it's close enough to justify it.
But the earlier ones, the first two
were clear cut. He just got ahead. So, when you go on the outside, you risk the other driver pushing you off, and you take that risk. But here, I mean, too many times, in my opinion.
It's interesting as well, in the driver steward's room, the driver steward this weekend is Derek Warwick, who of course has played such a huge role in the British Racing Drivers Club throughout the years, knows Lando very well, big fan of Lando, so any presumption that because we're in Austria, because we're at the Red Bull ring, the penalty initially was given to favour Red Bull, personally I think would be wide of the mark, because you don't get much more of a bigger Lando Norris fan than Derek Warwick.
I mean, rules are rules, and once you're up there, you have to follow them. There's many times where it's been 50-50 in my experience, and you don't get the favour sometimes. But clearly, it's racing, but there are rules.
Absolutely, there are. It was a great run from Red Bull, from Max Verstappen this weekend. We've spoken about that. Sergio Perez, from the moment he ran off in that incident with Lando Norris, where do you think his head was at? Because he looked a little scrappy after that.
The problem is, once you get dirt on your tyres, it's quite difficult to restart straight away, and you're struggling for grip for sometimes half a lap, sometimes 3 laps, sometimes even more. And it could have been that, and he just couldn't get the rhythm back, and he was hounded by the other cars. And, it was clear that Danny Ric was quite strong, and he was able to defend very well, and, Sergio, it took him a while.
Now, ultimately, in that race, the Ferrari managed to finish ahead of Sergio Perez, the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, with brilliant strategy from them today. Ferrari really having a good time of it these last 2 weekends after a disappointing run at the French Grand Prix. I believe we can actually hear from Carlos Sainz now. So why don't we roll to hear what the Spaniard thought. A great run last weekend. This run, a brilliant weekend as well, as he finished in an excellent 5th place.
Hey Carlos, I'm guessing when you had your engineering meeting, this is probably the best case scenario, right?
Yeah, it was. Finished P5 today was a good accomplishment, especially after struggling massively in lap 1 with a hard tire. It was a bit of a bold choice, to start on the hard, especially feeling the grip in the formation lap, and in lap 1 I was like, oh, I'm really gonna struggle versus the medium and the soft runners here. But somehow I managed to keep it together, stay patient, did a very long stint on the hards, I think it was 50 laps, and then attack at the end, which was super good fun, and we managed to put together a very strong P5 finish, and very happy.
Are you just loving it when you've got a car that you can really go and attack?
Yeah, I mean, it's great, no? Because you have fresh tire. I wish, maybe having a bit more top speed would have made the move on Daniel a bit easier, but I gave it my best, and we keep improving, we keep being strong in the corners. We improved a lot the tire management this weekend. We've nailed the strategy 2 consecutive weekends in a row. P6, P5, it's starting to be a bit more the Carlos that I want to be in Ferrari, and we are starting to execute the races the way I want them to execute.
Awesome.
Well, that was Carlos's view of the past 2 weekends, and in particular this one. And Sam Collins, this was a race that was executed to perfection by Ferrari. They may not have made it through to Q3, but then as the drivers told us last night, they had absolutely no intention of doing so. This was all their game plan for the race strategy today.
Yeah, it was the master plan, and for once we agree on something. Christian Horner obviously agrees with me as well, and he runs a World Championship winning Formula 1 team, so I think I'm right there. Moving on though, the Ferrari strategy for the second weekend running was really, really good. However, it wasn't the unpredicted strategy that they had at the Styrian Grand Prix. This was the strategy we expected. So going into the race weekend, we put this graphic up on screen and we thought this was the race strategy. So you can see there's a one-stop strategy where you stop and go on to the hard tyre once you started on the medium. Of course, that strategy works in the reverse as well. You start on the hard and go on to the medium. Which is the faster strategy? Well, on paper, Pirelli seemed to think it was start on the medium and go on to the hard. However, I thought starting on the hard would be the quicker route to go because the car starts with its full fuel load, so over 100 kilos of fuel in the back of that Ferrari. That sitting on the hard tyre is more resilient to that extra weight. So if you've got the medium tyre on, you're going to degrade the medium tyre faster. Then you come to the pits and you go on the hard tyre, but you're not getting the full advantage of that slower degrading hard tyre because you're running it on the lighter car. So when you've got a lighter car on the medium tyre later in the race, you're going to get more pace out of it. And that's exactly what we saw Carlos Sainz doing. They both started about the same place on the grid, and Carlos Sainz dropped back after a little bit of argy-bargy at the start of the race. But moving on through the race, Sainz did a very good drive. He came to the pits on schedule, put on those medium tyres, and then started to close up the gap on his teammate. Charles Leclerc hadn't really got an answer for a hard-charging Spaniard on the medium tyres. And those medium Pirellis worked really well on the lightweight car at that point. So they had to swap position. Charles Leclerc hadn't got any defence to him, but it was the only way that Charles Leclerc could get past Daniel Ricciardo. So, as you see, the Ferrari team manager got onto the radio and said, let Carlos through, he's quicker than you. It worked out because he got straight onto the back of the McLaren, got past and got extra points. It was a really good strategy. It was a great master plan, and actually I got that completely wrong in commentary yesterday, but now we can see what Ferrari were really up to, and it was very clever from them. And Will, when you're having discussions like that, it is a pretty difficult thing to get across to racing drivers that they have to go on a slower tyre and get knocked out in Q2 almost on purpose.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly for them, didn't it? And such a turnaround from the difficulties they had in France. A great couple of weekends for Ferrari. A great couple of weekends for McLaren as well. Andreas, thanks so much for coming on to the show. Lando, today, what a drive from him. First of all, let's get it out of the way. The penalty, fair, not fair?
I have no understanding for that penalty, to be honest. It's at the beginning of the race where it's normal that there's close fighting. Lando was on the racing line. In Michael Massey's word, he would normally say that a go-kart driver already knows when you go to the outside there, you will end up in the gravel. So, yeah, I don't understand. He didn't do anything stupid there, Lando, and I think was also different compared to what we have seen later on with Perez against Charles. But it is what it is. Probably took the chance away to fight for P2. But sensational drive from Lando today, and more than happy with the podium today.
This is it. I mean, what a great result for the team. Lando's phenomenal qualifying performance, and also a huge turnaround for Daniel as well. A great race from him. There must be a lot to be positive about coming out of today.
Yeah, no, was very happy also for Daniel. It was important for him after the difficult qualifying yesterday to strike back today, which he did. He had a lot of pressure all race, but he was great in keeping the position under massive pressure, and looked like he was a lot more comfortable also today in the car. So important points for the Constructors' Championship as well, and hopefully that gives him now good energy going into the next 2 weeks in order to then make the next step again in Silverstone in front of our home fans.
I must ask you though about the race pace of Ferrari. All season long it's looked like they've had positive qualifying, struggled in the race. Over these last 2 weekends it's been the opposite. They've really come on song under race conditions. How threatening do you see the challenge posed by Ferrari going over these next few races as we go, as you say, to your home race at Silverstone?
I think it's simply a close battle with Ferrari all year. They're a great team with two great drivers. We never underestimated what a team like Ferrari can do, but at the same time we're a great team. We have two great drivers and we have a very competitive car, so we just focus on ourselves. We need to get our job done, extract the maximum out of the package each weekend, make sure we stay on top of the reliability, stay strong operationally, and then we have everything in our hands to battle them.
What a fantastic year, though, for McLaren, for Lando. Austrian Grand Prix 2020, his first podium in Formula One, through to today, the Austrian Grand Prix 2021, back on the podium. The only driver to have scored points in every race this season. Just how impressed have you been with him? And how much positivity have you seen grow within your team over the last 12 months?
Yeah, it's obviously great to see what we could do so far this year. It simply confirms that we made again the next step as a team in the way we work together with the performance of the car, and then together with Lando, but also Daniel, we have a great driver lineup, and that ends up in results, and that is simply a great reward for every single member of the team for all the hard work everyone is putting it in, and a confirmation that we are definitely heading in the right direction. At the same time, despite all the ambition we're having, we still need to be also realistic and not get carried away with what we could do. We want to get back to winning races. We know that will take some more years until everything is up and running in terms of infrastructure and so on back home. But results like today obviously give us a lot of positive energy within the team to simply keep our heads down and keep working hard.
How do you celebrate tonight? Schnapps and schnitzel?
Not decided yet, but normally we find a good program after races like that.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much for coming on this show. Really appreciate it. A great job from McLaren. But as Andrea says, they're very recognising of the threat that is posed by Ferrari, who have come on. Sam was saying with that brilliant strategy which they employed this weekend, their race pace is undeniable.
Definitely. I mean, obviously planning it and executing it was perfect. Clearly with Norris, I mean, they are very quick. So we'll see in Silverstone if at a different kind of track, maybe it'll be a bit closer and we'll get a big battle.
And Ferrari coming on song at the same time. We're going to have a great fight between the two teams.
I think so. Should be good.
Really should. Let's talk we won't talk to, we'll hear from Charles Leclerc. Well, we finish off talking about McLaren and Ferrari. We've heard from Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc, a P8 it was at the flag.
Crikey, Charles, you had a good afternoon with Checo this afternoon, didn't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a good afternoon, but an exciting afternoon probably is the word. Obviously, there was quite a bit of tension under the helmet. Now, helmet off, we've spoken. I think he exaggerated. That's it, I will move on. I'm not the type of guy that is just staying on the same thing for a long time. It's been very frustrating in the car because I felt like I had a lot more pace, but I couldn't use it. Every time I saw an opportunity, there were very few opportunities because we were a DRS train, but every time I saw an opportunity, I tried to go for it. And twice I didn't have enough space on the exit of the corner, but it's life, it's like this.
Car came alive, like you said, in the race day after a difficult qualifying. Can you take a lot of encouragement from your performance today?
Yeah, I felt like we were a little bit less strong compared to last week, but we were still very strong, and I think it was positive. We didn't look much in the mirrors. I think the only shame was that we were on the same strategies as the one in front, so no tyre advantage by doing a reverse strategy, but it paid off for Carlos, so I think we did a good thing to do the split of cars at the beginning of this race.
Let's continue this Ferrari-McLaren narrative with the guy who had a great weekend. Well, Saturday was not easy again, I know, but on the basis of where you were at, how positive was today? Back in the points and the Daniel of old firing out some great overtaking.
It was better. Not to be pessimistic, but it couldn't really be worse. I think for what I was, obviously where it's been the last couple of weeks. But I think I enjoyed it more today. I had fun. I think that sounds very simple at this level of the game, so to speak. But I think you need to get that enjoyment back. So yeah, it was good to attack, defend. I tried, and thought I left everything on the track. So that's. I think I can leave here happier about that. There's still more speed I got to find and things I got to learn with the car, but for everything I know so far, I was happy with today's execution.
If we're honest, last week was going really well until you had the issue with the power unit. I think it was. Is it just the Saturdays that you need to get your head around so that by the time the lights go out on Sunday, you're just that little bit higher up to be able to do what you do?
It'll help, you know, and I've kind of been relying on good starts, good first laps to get myself out of the mess and kind of back in that track position. But yeah, the further up you qualify, the more clear air you have, and it gets a bit easier. But for sure, Saturdays has been pretty poor. We're trying to work on that and figure that out. And I think Sundays there's still some pace to find, but just got to keep plugging away, move on, move forward. Yeah, just keep at it. It's obviously taken longer than I thought, but it is what it is now. I kind of accepted that and just got to keep making incremental gains.
Lovely stuff, man. Have you got a spring back in your step? Daniel back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also pretty tired right now. Like, it's been I like triple headers, but they're always tiring. You just need a few days sleep more than anything. But yeah, today was a bit more spring worthy.
Good stuff, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and well done. Good to see you back.
Cheers.
Thanks, man. Great to see Daniel back, smiling. How hard is it, you know, as a racing driver, when you can't quite gel with the car that you have, when it's not doing what you want, and as Daniel says, you then don't get that enjoyment out of something that you should naturally be loving?
It's tough because, number one, you always feel like you're missing something. You know, like today, it was good for him. You know, it was a good result, but you always feel like there's a bit more and more pace to come. And it's a little bit unexplainable sometimes. You know, you're a bit lost and your teammates are better on a weekend or consistently. And it's not easy, you know, because you need to get yourself out of that spiral and get together with the car. And sometimes it can click in one weekend, sometimes it takes a whole year.
Yeah. Well, okay, sorry. We are now going to go to Sebastian Vettel, who we had earlier in the pen because he was out of the race on the very last lap today. A little moment with Kimi Räikkönen at the end of a toughly fought Grand Prix. Let's hear from the German about that final lap and his retirement from the race.
Sebastian, what was Kimi doing?
Sorry?
What was Kimi doing?
I don't know. I think it was a misunderstanding, so I'll have a look and speak to him.
The pace of the car after you put on the harder tyre, was it not really there this afternoon?
Well, it felt okay, but I think it wasn't there throughout the whole race, so we need to have a look.
Okay, how do you look over the whole weekend as a whole? You take the whole weekend as a whole, how does it feel?
The race felt okay, but we didn't get any points, so obviously a bit disappointed.
Oh, okay. I'm just hearing that Lando Norris has been given a couple of penalty points alongside his time penalty today. I assume the same will be given to Sergio Perez, whether that's a couple of penalty points per incident for Sergio, and that's 4, or I don't know.
I don't know, I haven't got any penalty points, so I wouldn't know.
Have you never got penalty points ever?
Maybe back in 2016. I normally just crashed on my own, not with other people. That was a joke, but well, maybe it's not. But.
I like that. Excellent, cool. Right, where are we going now? What should we? Who should we talk to now, or should we just talk amongst ourselves for a little bit? Difficult situation there between the two guys. Obviously, Kimi trying to make his way out from behind George, didn't quite see Seb there, and then it's just game over. As there goes Kimi, in fact, to go and see the stewards.
Good timing, I guess.
Great start.
No, I mean, it's not easy. Sometimes you're focusing on a different area and you just get it wrong. But obviously, yeah, not the most ideal time, I guess.
Not ideal. Back to Sam Collins in the studio, my man. What have you got for us?
Yeah, Will, I'm just breaking in with a little bit of breaking news for the reason why you just saw Kimi Räikkönen walking in. It's not just the incident with Sebastian Vettel that we're discussing. George Russell has now been summoned to race control in the battle he was having with Kimi Räikkönen. He's been investigated for moving under braking, which you're not allowed to do. So that was a rule that's really heavily enforced when Max Verstappen came into the sport. And I think Callum will probably be able to tell you what's allowed and what's not acceptable. But George Russell, the news is that George Russell is under investigation and could be penalised for moving under braking. Lando Norris, those 2 penalty points takes him up to 10 out of the allowed 12 for the year. But the 2 of them are going to expire before the British Grand Prix, so he's only really on 8. But he's going to have to be a bit careful going forward through the next few races, because you get 12, you get that automatic 1-race ban. Back to you, Will.
Interesting. So Lando gains 2, moves to 10, but then drops 2 before Silverstone. So he's just stayed where he is. He stayed where he is.
Yeah.
But you're right, Sam. You know, he's only now 4 points away from a race ban. Interesting stuff. The stewards have been pretty strict today, haven't they, on driver etiquette, from what we've seen in terms of the upholding of Sporting Code Appendix L, Chapter 4, Paragraph 2.b. Do you think George will get a penalty for moving under braking? Difficult to say, really.
It is difficult to say. I mean, obviously, you know, there were a few close moments, not between the 2 cars, but, you know, where he was moving. But it's a difficult one. If the other team pushes hard for it, then it's more likely that you might get an issue. But I think it'll be okay, to be honest.
There's Seb, so I'm assuming that Kimi and Seb are going to have their little hearing now. But why don't we hear from the man who's just been given 2 penalty points before he loses 2 penalty points to stay on the same number of penalty points as he already had. Let's stop talking about penalty points and talk instead about the podium today for Lando Norris. A great weekend for him, even if it wasn't the second place that it could and arguably should have been.
I know that you've started to go well here in Austria. McLaren looks strong here as well, but you're consistently competing now in this really strong position. You're racing Red Bulls and Mercedes today. Is this the sign of things to come?
I mean, I hope so, of course. But whether or not we can keep this up at every racetrack, you know, this is one of the tracks we've done well every single year, qualifying and the race. It's always been one of our best circuits of the season. So I think the main thing is we don't just get too complacent and think this is where we are now, because just last weekend when the car wasn't, when we didn't have 2 weeks to nail everything, the car wasn't good enough. So yeah, we had a great day today and we've been fast all weekend, but I think I don't expect to be like this every single weekend throughout the rest of the season. I think it's going to be much tougher again and not so much glory, so we'll see.
Awesome, congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Funny, at the start of the season, we were asked to predict who we thought would win a race outside of Red Bull and Mercedes this season on merit. And I was convinced then, and I'm still convinced that McLaren might do it. They've shown some great pace this year, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, this weekend I had them already in the top 3 for quali. I put a little bet on that one. But, I mean, they were... It only takes one mistake from another team for them to snatch it, basically.
Absolutely. It could be this year for McLaren. A great result, though, for Valtteri Bottas on a weekend when he needed a result. In fact, he needs a result every weekend now. It is a straight fight, Toto Wolff has said, between Valtteri Bottas and George Russell for that seat at Mercedes next year. And with a P2 and the top-placed Mercedes, Valtteri did everything he could today.
Hey Valtteri, back on the podium and a strong podium finish day. You showed really good pace.
I think it was a strong race, yes. I think definitely starting 5th and ending up 2nd was the maximum today we could get. I think Red Bull Max, you know, they could really control the race and do a bit of a Sunday drive for them. But yeah, I don't think we could have done much more today from where I started.
How concerned are you about the relative pace of Mercedes versus Red Bull right now?
It's quite a clear difference on this track, but it is this track. We've been here now 2 weeks in a row, and it's going to be a completely different type of track in 2 weeks. And yeah, we need to keep working. We have two weeks to try and find more pace, but also we have some upgrades planned for Silverstone, so hopefully they will help.
And do you feel like you've turned a corner personally as well? You kind of seem like you're building some momentum again.
Yeah, I think the last 2 weekends been more positive. You know, a bit more cleaner weekends and pretty solid Sundays as it should be. So yeah, hopefully can carry this good momentum and yeah, I'll just try to look ahead.
There's 10 corners here that you have to turn. Just discussing that after Valtteri said he turned a corner. We digress. Lewis Hamilton, we haven't really mentioned much about Lewis today. He was running in 2nd for the majority of the race today. Seemed like he picked up damage at some point. Well, he was struggling with his tyres. The team believe, I understand, that he might have damaged his floor running wide through turn 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue when you damage an aero part of the car. You lose time and you also lose basically grip from the tyre, and there you start graining it. And I think maybe that was a combination of all of that, and yeah, he slowed down quite quick.
When your bad day's finishing fourth, your good days are great. On to Max Verstappen, speaking of good days being great, camera 2. He's been imperious, unbeatable, unstoppable. He's been Max.
Max, congratulations. You're on some run of form. It must feel great with the car and the team right now.
Yeah, it was really, really good today. I expected it to be good, but not this good. And both compounds, I think the pace was just really comfortable there. I mean, also managing tires and stuff, so yeah, really happy with how the whole race went. There were many major issues or difficulties, so that's sometimes you don't get these races often. So you have to take it and enjoy it.
Were you surprised that an attack from the Mercedes never really came to fruition?
I mean, it's always difficult to predict, but I felt good. And then, when you feel good in the car, you have a good balance, and they are not matching your lap times. That's exactly, of course, what you want. And that's why we could extend our gap like this.
And some mega support from your fans this weekend.
Yeah, it was incredible. So much orange. I mean, already, of course, the whole weekend, but today as well during the race, the support was incredible, and it's just amazing to see fans back in general.
Great stuff, thank you.
He is in the form of his life. There's no two ways about it. It's going to take something very special to stop Max Verstappen.
I think so. It just keeps coming.
It really does. Let's take a look then at your championship positions. At the end of this, the Austrian Grand Prix, in the end of the first triple header of the 2021 season, because Max Verstappen has extended his championship lead. He now sits on 182, plays 150. Lewis Hamilton, that's 32 points. He could take Silverstone off and still lead the championship. Sergio Perez is third. Lando Norris still sits in fourth, ahead of Valtteri Bottas. Then it's Leclerc and Sainz in the two Ferraris. Ricciardo P8, Gasly P9, and Vettel still sits in 10th for Aston Martin. Behind them, in P11 in the championship, it's Fernando Alonso, then Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, and the two Alfa Romeos, George Russell narrowly missing out on his first point of the season. In the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull still lead the way on 286 points, 44 ahead of Mercedes. It's an irony that that's Lewis Hamilton's race number. In third, McLaren on 141, Ferrari fourth on 122, then it's AlphaTauri just 4 points ahead of Aston Martin, with Alpine and Alfa Romeo 7th and 8th, Williams and Haas with no points as of yet. Callum, it's been a tough 3 weeks for everybody on the road. Fun for you though, you got to run out on Friday morning for Alfa Romeo. How was that?
It was good. I got to drive, a bit short, would have loved a bit more. You guys got lots of driving, well, or watching I suppose, but yeah, no, it was definitely good. Maybe we'll see me again later.
I hope so, man, and hopefully we'll see you back on the post-race show. Again, it's been a real pleasure, mate.
If you invite me back.
Oh, you're always invited, every week.
Thank you.
Well, don't tell Pietro though, because he'll get very upset. He's invited back too. Right, which camera am I looking at to say goodbye? Number one. Thank you folks for tuning in. Thank you to Lawrence in the pen. Thanks to the gang back at base and Sam Collins. Thank you to Callum Ilott, to all of our guests, and of course to you at home. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been the post-race show from the Austrian Grand Prix. We'll see you at Silverstone in 2 weeks' time.